Good Shabbos, everyone. We're going to be beginning on page 1 in the blue Shabbos sitters. Again, anybody online, if you have a Mishaberach or an El Mully, please put it in now, since we'll be doing those after Mincha before Kabbalat Shabbat. And hopefully I can get this to work. Again, page 1. Ashrei Yoshvei Beisecha, Od Halucha Sela. Tilas Adonai Rabbi, Bevei B'Shor Shem Kacholi Olam Ve'ed, V'nachnu Nivrech Yoah Me'ato Olam Hallelujah. Middle of page 2, please rise if you're able. Yiskadal v'yiskadash Shemei Rabbo. V'yalmo Divra Kirasei v'yachnik Malkusei. B'chayachon v'yomachon v'chayachos Beis Yisrael. V'agol Izman Karim v'yimru Amen. Yehei Shemei Rabbo Mavorach L'Om Yomaya. Yisbarak Yistabak Yisva'av Yisraman V'Yisnasei V'Sadav Yisalev Yisalo Shmei D'Kudishu Barechu Element Kol V'Chosav V'Shiroso Tish V'Chosav V'Nechamoso Damiran B'Alma V'Imru Amen. Page 3b. Please join with me through the Kedusha on page 4, then continue individually to page 9. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avosenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah. Hail Hagadol, Hagibor Hanara El Elyon. Gomel Chasadim Tovim Elkanei Akov V'Zocher Chasei Aviv V'Goel V'Vnei Laman Shemo V'Yahavo. Melech Ozeh Bokei Moshe Mogain Baruch Atah Adonai Mogain Avraham Bokei Sarah. Atah Gibor Li'olam Adonai Mechayei Meitim Atah Rav Lo Shiach. Mechalchel Chayim Mechesed Mechayim Mesim Rachamim Rabim. Somech Nofei Rofei Cholim Matira Surim Mokaino Munas Shnei Ofor. Mi chamoka ba'al gavulach, the midam malach, melech me'emes mechayeh mitzayim Yeshua, v'nam mo'ana tochrios me'sim, baruch atah Adonai, mechayeh ha'me'sim. Page 4. Nekadesh Hashem kol ba'al mekakasu she'atar shemei maral kakasu al yod nefer kara zev yamah. Kadosh, 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 Adonai tzavos melech ha'aretz kavodo, ma'ata baruch yameru. Brukavod Adonai Mim Komov Devrei Kachav Kasuv Lemor. Yimloch Adonai Dor Dor Hallelujah. The door Vador Nagid Galech and Hosea No Shaleno Miflei Shmim Lilam Ve'ed Ki El Melech Ador Kadosh Atah Baruch Atah Adonai El HaKadosh. Again, individually to page 9. Again, a reminder, anyone on the live stream, if you have a Mishnah Baruch and Omali, please put it into the comments now. So we're going to be doing it them very, very soon. I see we have one at least. Page 10, if you completed the Amida, please rise if you're able. Yiskadal v'yiskadash shemei rabba. Yalmod yivra kirusei v'yamak malkosei. B'chayachoni yomachon u'chayachol beish Yisrael. Bagol izman karim v'yimru amein. Yehi shmei rabba mavorach lo mei omaya. Yisbarak yistabak yisaviyas raman v'yisnasei v'sadav v'salei v'salo shmei dekadisho b'rechu. Elam and kol b'chos v'shirosa. Tish b'chos v'nechamosa. Damir ram v'yolma v'yimru amein. Tiskabal v'zulchon v'chon. L'chol Yisrael kodoma v'chon diva shemaya v'yimru amein. Yehi shlom rabba min shemaya. B'chayim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'imru amein. Asa shalom b'mrama hu yaseh shalom. Aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'imru amein. Page 11, Aleinu. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol l'seis gedula v'yotzer breishis shelo osonu kegoyei haratzon v'la osamonu k'mishpakos hadama shelo som chelkeinu kohen v'ga'oraleinu kechol hamona v'anachnu korim u'mishachavim u'modim Lifnei melech malkei hamlochim hakadosh baruch hu shahunatei shamayim liyosef ha'areh. V'ne'emar v'hoya Adonai l'melech al kol ha'oretz v'yom hahu yiyeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad. Mourner's Kaddish for Mincha. Those in mourning, those with Yortzites Friday during the day, or anyone else would like to join in with me. Page 12. Yiskadal v'yiskadash shemei rabba. V'yalmod divrei kerusei v'yalmich malkusei. B'chayachon v'yomechon v'chayachol beish Yisrael. Ma'agol izman karim v'yimru amein. Yehei shmei rabba mavorach lo mei omaya. Yisbarak v'yistabak v'yisva'av v'yisraman v'yisnasei. V'yisadar v'yisalei v'yisalo shmei dekadisho b'rechu. Ayilman kol b'chosa v'shirosa, tish b'chosa v'nechamosa, damiran v'olma v'imru amen. Yehei, shalom min shemaya, b'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Osei shalom b'mrama, hu yasei shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Okay, Murray, I guess it's you. Okay. Look at the nice guy. Okay. All right, we have one Mishnah Baruch online. Okay, we're now going to do the Mishnah Baruchs. When Murray pauses, if you have one, please rise in your place and say it. Page 144, right? Yeah, I think it's 140.
So it's just one of
Just from Regina.
Okay. Mi shebeirach avosin Avraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov, Sarah Rivka Rachel v'Leah, who yivarech rapei es Amelia Weiss, Shlomo Heschel ben Chana. Zava Golda bar Rivka Leah, Naomi Sarah bat Golda, Zota Chava bat Nachama Sheva, Yaakov ben Chaim, Shira bat Chanadina, Riteklas Yimina Tava. Bata Bela Hasel, Yochanan Yisrael ben Kaina, Yana ben Eliezer, Bracha Sahava bar Chayke, Yehudit bat Leah, Yehudit, Ayanta bat Miriam, Tzvi ben Ezer, Zeph, Israel Shimon ben Moshe v'Hane, Malka bat Leah, Fagel, David Pinchas, ben Malka, Ashel Gevalia ben Rivka, Shmuel Natan ben Tzipora Yeta, Prioritizer, Benjamin ben Malka, Yaakov ben Chaya Halevi, Bob Sharschmidt, Lawrence Newhouse, Chayida bat Bela, Chana bat Simcha, Sad Yosef bat Celia Michael David ben Malka, Katie Ahara Susko, Aryeh ben Tzipora, Aram Elchanan ben Chava, Yosef Yaakov, Pina bat Chana, Chana Leah bat Gittel, Leah bat Aram Esora, Yudah bat Gittels, Carol Seidman, Arnold Seidman, Carl Prigola, Myra bat Rachel, Pesha bat Pearl, Malka Miriam bat Dina, Hatcha bat Liba, Racha bat Minerva, Rezel bat Seidi bat Heschel, Aliana Chava bat Sarah, Chana bat Hadassah, Evan Loy Shapiro, Josh Burke, Arthur Gralitzer, Helen Cass, Larry Goldstein, Rivka bat Bela, China Yala bat Rivka, Davida Kayla bat Rivka, Shana Liba bat Miriam, Howie Goldfarb, Mordechai Yisuk ben Basha, Hayya bat Fadel, Teresa Connolly, Surah, Rachel bat Smalka, Sarah bat Yeta, Novak Israel ben Zipporah, Simcha ben Tova, Ezra bat Miriam, Gedelia Reuben ben Miriam, Mordechai Reuben ben Etel Malki, Deborah Leba bat Leah, Pinchas David ben Basha Gittel, Chana bat Eta, Shimshon ben Leah, Mordechai Moshe Yosef Mordechai ben Feigel, ben Nacha v'Yonatan. Yes, Kolochol Mikol Kedosha, Hakadosh Baruch Hu Yimalei Rachim Aleihem, Lachzikam Laprasam Vayish Lachlem Meira, Refuah Shalem and Hashemayim, Refuah Nefesh, Refuah Guf, Luso Shachalei Yisrael, Milizog, Refuah Gerova Lavo, Hashtov Agodan Kardi Ben Amen. May the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah bring healing to all those people we prayed for this evening, and for all other members of our congregation that are ill, and for all people suffering from illness. And may they also bring help to those people who tend to them. And let us pray that healing is at hand, and let us say Amen. Amen. Now turn to page 13. Okay. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hashoresh, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachei Hamlochim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech, Malachei Hamlochim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu ni l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech, Malachei Hamlochim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzeizchem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech, Malachei Hamlochim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Page 15. Neran and all Adonai Nari, let's hear Shenu, Naktamafan. Ad v'yishana could be dov yama am toalev of heim v'heim lo yadu darchoi asher nishbati v'api im yavoon el menuchasi shiru l'Adonai shechadash shiru l'Adonai kol haaretz shiru l'Adonai. Lifnei Adonai kiva lishpat haaretz lishpat tevel v'tzedek v'amim v'mnaso Adonai malach tagal haaretz yismuchu im rabim. Zaru la tzadik yulishrei le simcha simchu v'tzadikim b'Adonai v'hodu l'zecher kadsho. Mizmo shir l'Adonai chadash, kineflosa asa, hashila yaminu zerawa kacho. Lifnei Adonai kibol ishpat haaretz, yishpat tevel b'tzedek v'amim v'meisharim. Adonai Malach higazu amim, yosef kirubim tanu haaretz. That's amazing. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu v'ishtachavu l'harkacho, ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu. If you're able to, please rise. Mizmor David. Adonai Lamabul Yashov, Yeshev Adonai Melech Yolam, Adonai Yozim O Yitain, Adonai Yivarech Esamo Vashalom. You may be seated. Page 21. Lecha dodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nekabela. Shama v'zacha v'dibur echad, Hishmiyanu el ham-yuchad, Adonai echad u'shemahu echad, L'shem l'tiferet v'l'itila, Lecha dodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, Ki mikor ha-beracha, Merosh mikedem nisucha, Sof mahaseh b'machshavot techila, Lecha dodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nekabela. Mikdash melech emelucha, Kumitzei mitocha hafecha, Rav loch shevet be'emek habocha, V'hu yachamo l'layechem la, Lecha dodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nekabela. Hitnahari meyafo kumi, Livshi bigdet tefatechami, Ayah ben Yishai beis halachmi, Kova el nafshi ge'ola, Lecha dodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nekabela. Hit-odedi, Kiva oreh kumi yori, Udi, shir dabedi, Kivod Adonai yolayich nikla, Lecha dodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nekabela. Lo tevo shir v'lo zikomi, Matishtochachi u'matemi, Bach yechazu ani yehiyami, V'nihivnito ir altilo, Lecha dodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nekabela. V'hayu l'mshisa shahosayich, V'rachaku kol mulayich, Yasiz alayich Elohayich, Kimsos chatan al kala, Lecha dodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nekabela. Yamin usmol tifrotzi, V'yes Adonai taritzi, Al yad ish ben patzi, V'nihismecha v'nagila, Lecha dodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nekabela. If you're able to, please rise and face the entrance to your rooms. Bo'i v'shalom ateret bala, Gam b'simcha u'v'zahala, Toch emunei am segula, Bo'i chala, Lecha dodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nekabela. You may be seated. Page 23. Mizmo Shilim HaShabbos, Tolos Ladonai, Lazamel Shimcha Elyon. Give a book. O Yenavon, the Seva, the Shenranim Yiyu, Lahakikush Adonai, Tsuri, Valvaha Sapo, Adonai Malach. Mikolos Mayim Rabim Adenim Eshpereyom, Adim Amrom Adonai, Edosech Namu Ma'od, Lavesanav Kodesh Adonai, La'arech Yamim. If you are a mourner, if you have your side, or if you wish to join us in saying the mourner's Kaddish, if you're able to, please rise, turn to page 24, and repeat with me. Yisgadal v'yisgadash shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
Balma divra kirusei v'yamlich malchusei v'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei d'chol beis Yisrael ba'agola v'zman kari v'yemru Amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach la'olam omei omaya yisborach v'yishtabach v'yispa'ar v'yisramam v'yisnasei v'yisada v'yisaleh v'yisalal shmei d'kodesho b'richu la'ela min kol birchasa v'shirasa tush b'chasa v'nechamasa da'amiran ba'olma v'yimru Amen. Yehei shlom o Rabbah min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru Amen. Good Shabbos, everyone. Okay. This week, we have a double parsha. Okay, it's Parsha Baha and Bechukotai. And Parsha Baha, and both of these parshas deal with how Jews, will behave, and all the laws that apply to them once they're in Eretz Yisrael. And in Parshas Baha, they discuss the Shemitah year. That's when every seventh year you let the land rest. It's a Sabbath, a Shabbat to the land itself. And so you can plant, plow, and whatever may grow, what they call the aftergrowth, whatever may grow is available to everybody. It's free. And then it also talks about the Jubilee year, where you have, after 7 Shemitah years, which makes 49, and then in the 50th year, that's also resting for the land. But it's also a release of debts and release of slaves and the returning of any land that was sold to the original owners. What, already? I got something wrong.
No,
What?
I'm confused, Mike, because so the 49th and the 50th year, the land goes free, 2 years in a row?
No.
No.
Oh, no. Well, no, the 50th year is, you don't have 2 consecutive resting. It's,
The 50th year you can plant.
no, the 50th year is the Sabbath year. It's the 50th year is the Jubilee year.
The 49th year you can plant?
Yeah.
So even if it's 7 years, you still can plant?
Right. And as a matter of fact, also the question is, it's people concerned, like in the Shemitah, they said people concerned, what are we going to, if the land is fallow, if you don't do anything, plant, in the Shemitah year, and God promised that in the 6th year, it'll be so productive, there'll be enough for 3 years. For the 6th year, the 7th year, that's resting, and the 8th year, we're going to start planting. You won't have anything until the 9th year. So in the 6th year, you're going to have plenty for 3 years.
So the 49th year is not a Shemitah?
49th year would not be that's interesting, but it would not be a Shemitah. I don't think you could have consecutive. I don't think you can have 2 consecutive.
That would be 3 years.
You look it up.
That would be, maybe really make it 3 years that you couldn't harvest.
Well, you're talking about 2 years that you can't harvest, right?
The 49th
Yeah.
year was also a Shemitah, you say the 50th.
Yeah, it's can you have a Shemitah year and then a Jubilee year the following year? Look it up. I'll see what happens.
So you not Shabbat.
No, I do know they don't talk about that. They talk about, it talks about,
I thought about that before, and I didn't know.
When did they start counting? When did it was the first?
I can't hear you.
49 years is Shemitah, because I thought it was then the 50th. What about the next year afterwards?
From when did they start counting the first year?
Whatever it is. It's 7 Shemitahs, and then there's the Jubilee.
Yeah, I understand.
So is the Shemitah, the Jubilee is after a Shemitah?
Okay.
2 years in a row you can't count.
Okay, listen, I wasn't even planning on focusing on that, so, I mean, look that up. Okay. So, all right, and then the next parsha after that, B'chukatai, the parsha enumerates all the blessings that God will give to the people if they obey His commandments, and then it lists all the rebukes, the punishments if they don't obey the commandments. But God says that regardless of the rebukes, He'll never break His covenant with the people. Okay. And then, now, I'm going to come back to the first Bahar in a moment. But what I want to do is, if we go back to Shemos and Parshas Yisro, in that parsha you have the 10 Commandments, and I wouldn't spoke about that I object to that usage because that's an incorrect terminology. Those words do not exist in Hebrew. I mean, what the 10 Commandments really are, they call it Asar Devarim, Aseret HaDibros, but it's also referred to as Luchot HaBrit, means the tablets of the covenant. Those commandments, that is a covenant, that is a contract between God and the Jews. Okay, and I'm not going to go into that because I had already done that about a year ago. But after we finish with Parshas Yisro, we go into Parshas Mishpatim. And the first thing it says over there that, should you buy a Hebrew slave? And you say, whoa, didn't God just free the Hebrews?
Unbelievable.
Okay, so it's, and this is like 3 months, Mount Sinai, so it's 3 months after they came out of Egypt. And so now they say, but imagine, you're talking to Jews about buying Jews as slaves. Where did that come? What is that all about? And then he continues, it says, and he shall work for 6 years, and the 7th year he'll go free, unless, of course, the Jubilee year comes sooner, then it goes free over there. So again, didn't God just free the Jews?
But Murray,
So-
I apologize if you said it while I was out of the room, but I was looking at least some translation, and it didn't call them slaves, it even called them indentured servants, like.
You're talking about English. Okay, it's
I'm
about,
not
I was
saying
just
that, I'm
about,
talking about
I was
the
just
same
about to say that. So people say, wait, it's not a slave, okay?
Which
It's
is
an
worse, that they're not
it's
free
an
to
indentured
slave.
servant. But you understand, the Torah, that's a translation. The Torah uses the word eved. They were avadim when they were in Egypt, and now they're an eved also. There's no difference. And the question is, well, if in English, and maybe in French too, I don't know, if in English we have a difference between slave and indentured servant, couldn't the Torah have found a different word? And I think that the point is over here that God was not happy with this situation. So he says it's a slave. And again, there are more things to consider. And I think it's the late Lord Rabbi Jonathan Sacks. I think he was brilliant. Okay? He wrote in an article called The Chronological Imagination. And he says, the Torah itself did not abolish slavery, but it set into motion a process that would allow people to come on their own accord to a conclusion that slavery is wrong. So, yeah.
But you talk about two different kinds of slaves, Murray. The Jewish slaves sold themselves into slavery. They
But
were
it-
captured.
Regardless how it was
The
done.
term may be the same.
Okay, I'm going to get to that.
They basically, again, got paid for that 7 years because they sold themselves.
Nevertheless,
Yeah.
they were still slaves, okay? It is different, and I'm getting to that, okay? So, but all right, so this is so, then you can ask the question, why didn't God just force the abolition of slavery? God said, you can't do that. And again, Rabbi Sacks writes that the world was culturally and economically dependent on slavery, and change would have to happen gradually. And he references Maimonides in the Guide of the Perplexed. And Maimonides wrote, human nature does not allow man to suddenly change from one extreme to another. It is impossible for him to discontinue everything to which he has become accustomed. And you have to understand something. Regardless of what you're saying, both Rabbi Sachs and Maimonides agree this is not a good thing.
No,
Okay.
the slaves were captured people, but they weren't Jewish slaves.
But regardless, even under under this terms, this was not acceptable, and you couldn't force on them a sudden change. This is what we just said. The things that have been going on, we're used to a certain economic procedure, cultural procedure, and so on. You just can't say to a nation, to everybody, cut that out. It doesn't work, and so you had to evolve slowly. And then you can ask, why didn't God just perform a miracle and change human nature so that they would give this up? And Rabbi Sachs again references Maimonides. While God can perform miracles and change nature, he chooses not to interfere by changing human nature. God can certainly do that, but if he did, there would be no need to have the prophets or the Torah. So it's, regardless you want to call it indentured, it was not the same thing as the hard-working slaves of Egypt. It is still not desirable. Now, in English, okay, so I said, we talk about indentured servants. Now, what about the treatment of Jewish slaves, which you get to what you're just talking about? And it says, written, and this is in this week's Parsha Bahá. If your brother becomes destitute with you and is sold to you, do not work him with slave labor. So the rules for treatment of Jewish slaves, it is forbidden to demean the Jewish slave by giving him menial work. Give it to the non-Jewish slave, okay? He was to be treated as a hired hand, such as an agricultural worker or craftsman. The slave owner had to take care of the slave's children, even though they were not slaves. Slave owners would be punished for the mistreatment of slaves. I mean, it's if they did anything like knock out an eye or something, the slave would go free. If they killed the slave, it was capital punishment. So, I mean, you did not control their lives. The Jewish slave had to be released after working 6 years or at the Jubilee year, which came first. And he is not to be released empty-handed. He is to be furnished liberally from the master's flock, threshing floor, and winepress. And regardless of time served, he must be released in the Jubilee year, and he regains his land and his holdings. Now, once they are free, we are required to help them without demanding payment or charging interest. And also says, if he becomes slaves of non-Jews, we must help redeem him. That's how we treat, Jewish slaves. What about the non-Jewish slaves? These commandments did not apply to non-Jewish slaves. The non-Jewish slaves remain slaves forever and would be inherited just like any kind of property. And things that you are not allowed to demand of the Hebrew slave, you are permitted to do to the non-Jewish slave. Now, according to Maimonides, it was permissible to work a non-Jewish servant harshly. Maimonides says you can do that. But he also said that although the law permits it, we should be compassionate and not overburden or oppress the servant. Maimonides also said, do not denigrate them physically or verbally. Do not disgrace them. Do not treat them with constant screaming and anger. And he reminds people that all who have compassion will be treated compassionately. So this was the warning that Maimonides gives to people. I mean, I question this, and I think we need to understand this. If you are taught to be nice and treat people decently, you are compassionate, and you do this, to Jews, to fellow Jews. How can you, if you're doing that, how can you just take a 180-degree reversal and mistreat the non-Jew? It's one rubs off on the other. So I think the idea that's, for what we learn over here, and we heard this from Rabbi Sachs, Maimonides, whereas God does not force things on you suddenly, he expects certain things to evolve. And those things are to eventually abolish any kind of slavery, and to also, regardless whether you be Jewish or non-Jewish, it evolves that you have to treat all people with decency.
non-Jewish slaves came from prisoners of war. That's how
Well,
you-
yeah, right, okay, but still, the point is that, should you mistreat them? Should you treat them harshly? Just because the Torah doesn't address it, doesn't mean you're free to apply your own laws.
No, but it wasn't slaves like the black slaves were, when they were captured and sold. It was the spoils of war. That's where they came from. They were-
Well, yeah, that's how you got the, well, it was other spoils of war, or you bought them from other people.
Yeah, but they got them because they were trying to kill you. You went to war, that's how you got the slaves.
Or you buy them
But where'd you buy them from?
from other nations. You can do it.
Okay, I
You,
don't know if that was true.
the Torah has no problem, okay, with you buying, well, you can buy Hebrew slaves, providing, it's being sold from one Jew to another.
The Hebrew slave sold himself.
Okay.
He got money. from
They,
the slave.
that's how they got to be. Okay. Well, no, the Hebrew slave, if he was a criminal and couldn't compensate for the damage that he did, he would work it off by becoming a slave too.
Okay, so
Okay.
he got paid for it. There was a reason why he was a slave.
Well, yeah, but that, yeah, but the thing is that a Hebrew slave can be sold from one Jew to another Jew. He cannot be sold to a non-Jew. That wasn't permitted. You can acquire non-Jewish slaves either through war, or you go and you buy them from somebody else. How he got that a non-Jewish slave is something else. Maybe through war, or maybe he just bought them and so on. But you would treat, just way in this country, it was permitted to buy slaves. And you have to, ask the question, if it was permitted to buy non-Jewish slaves, do you have a situation like Uncle Tom's Cabin? I mean, what if those slaves are married and you say, well, I'm going to buy the male, but I don't want the female?
I'm curious, you say you talk about Maimonides. Were there slaves in Maimonides' time, or was Maimonides talking about biblical?
No, there was no slaves in Maimonides'
Oh,
time.
sure, there were slaves in my mom, maybe not
No,
Jewish
I'm talking
slaves.
There were no Jews.
The slaves Maimonides was talking about.
Yeah,
He was
Were they
talking,
in
he
his
was
time?
talking about, we're talking about, remember, this was written, while the Jews were
Yeah.
on Sinai. These were rules or commandments were set into place
Yeah.
that they would have to observe once they go into Israel. By the way, and this comes from Jeremiah, there was a problem in that the Jews, the Jewish masters, they were supposed to release the Hebrew slaves after 6 years, or after the Jubilee year. Well, they weren't doing that, and Jeremiah was saying that the Babylonians are coming us. What they're doing, is because we are violating the rules of Shemitah and slaves. So the king at that time made an appeal to the people, released the slaves, and they did. And Jeremiah says, and what happened was the Babylonians halted their approach, to Israel. That's how he interpreted. Well, after that, they went back and those people, and they recaptured their slaves. And they recaptured their slaves. Then the Babylonians continued, and the story is that, they destroyed the first temple and so on. That's the viewpoint from Jeremiah's viewpoint. All right. I think we spent a lot of time on that. Page 27, Kaddish Rabbanan. If you're a mourner, if you have your insight, or if you wish to just join us, if you're able to, please rise and repeat with me. Yiskadal v'yiskadash shemei rabo.
Amen.
B'olmod yivrod kirusei v'yamliach malchusei v'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei d'chol beis Yisrael v'agolo v'zman karib
V'yimru, Amen, Yehei Shmei, Rabba Mavor, V'yolam Omei Omai.
Yisbarach v'yishtabach v'yispa'ar v'yisramam v'yisnasei v'yisada v'yisaleh v'yisalal shmei nikudashah
Richu.
Le'ela minkol birchasa v'shirasa tush birchasa v'nechamosa ta'amiran v'alma v'yimru
Amen.
Al Yisrael v'al Rabbanon v'al Talmidei-hon v'al kol Talmidei Salmidei-hon v'al kol Monda Oskin v'yoraisa Li ba'asra hadain v'di v'chol asa v'asa Yehei lahon v'lachon shlom o'rabba China v'chista v'rachamin v'chayin arichin v'zona v'vicha ופרקונה מקודם אבוהנדי ושמיה יאמרו
Amen.
יהי שלום ורבו מן שמיה וחיים טובים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו אמן עושה שלום במרומו וברחמו יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו אמן.
Please rise.
ברוך הוא אדוני המבורך.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam V'ed.
ברוך אדוני ברוך לעולם ועד.
May be seated.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך המשיח ומלך המלכים ומלך המלכים. יום האוויר יום הביא לילה, והבדיל בין יומין לילה, אדוני צבא שמו ואלך וכיום, תמיד תמלוך לנו לעולם ועד, ברוך אתה אדוני, המערי ברוך.
Amen. All patience.
אבל שלום פסן. יבוא שך על כוסים ממנו לעולמי, ברוך אתה אדוני, אוהב עמו ישראל.
Page 30.
שמע
ישראל, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך, בכל לבבך, בכל נפשך, בכל מאודך, והיו הדברים האלה, אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבבך, ושיננתם לבניך ודברת בם, בשבתך ובעשיך, ובלכתך בדרך ושבך ופניך, ושאתם לעוז על ידיך, ילותו תפוס בעיניך, וחשפתם על מזוזות ביתך ובישורך. אדוני אלוהיכם אמן.
Amen.
ומלכוסו ברצון קיבלו עליהם משה בני ישראל, לכון שירה בשמחה רבה, ויאמרו כולם
מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, נוראתי לו זוסי פלא.
מלכוס הרו בניך בקיום לפני משה, צליונו ואמרו,
אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד.
ונאמר כי פדו אדוני יעקב, ולא יד חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני, גאל ישראל. השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו שלומותינו. ושמו צאצאנו ואינו לחיים שלום אלוהי טוב ביד עולם, ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלום אחד, ברוך אתה אדוני, הפורש סוכת שלום עלינו, ועל כל עמו ישראל וירושלים. Be able to please rise.
ובני ישראל es השבת, לעשות es השבת לדורתם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל es השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורתם ברית עולם.
ביני ובין בני ישראל,
Olam, Vishamru, B'nei Yisrael, et HaShabbat, La'asod et HaShabbat, Le'doratam Bari Olam. Ki shesh yamim asa Adonai, et hashamayim v'et ha'oretz, v'shamru b'nei Yisrael, et hashabat, la'asod et hashabat, le'doratam b'ri olam.
Uvayom hashvi'i
Shabbat
v'nafash, Shabbat v'nafash, Shabbat v'nafash,
V'shamru b'nei Yisrael, et hashabat, la'asod et hashabat, le'doratam b'ri olam.
which may stand for Chatzi Kaddish, Yisgadav, Yisgadash Me'rav.
Amen.
V'almod Libra, to receive him, Geth Makusei, T'chayech, V'yomech, V'chaytach, Beis Yisrael, V'avod V'ankari,
Imru amen, Yehishmei Rabba Mavorach Lamei Omayim.
Yisborach, Yishtabach, Yisbarach, Yisramam, Yisnasei, Yisadav, Yisalev, Salal, Shmei, Kudishot, Le'ela, Mikot, Rochasa, V'shirasa, V'chasa, V'nachamasa, Ta'amiram, B'loma, V'yimrim, Amen. Please remain standing for the Amida. We say it to ourselves, starting on page 35A or 35B, and conclude on page 38. If you're still saying the Amida, please feel free to continue. Otherwise, turn to page 47. If you're able to, please rise and join me on top of 47. Vayaku Hashemayim ha'aretz v'chol tziba'on v'echal Elohim b'yom hashvi v'lavto asher oso v'yishbos b'yom hashvi v'kol melavto asher oso v'yurach Elohim es yom hashvi v'yikadosh oso ki bo shavas mikol melavto asher bara Elohim la'asos Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elahei Avosseinu v'Elahei Avraham v'Elahei Yitzchak v'Elahei Yaakov v'El HaGadol HaGibor HaNorah El Hayom Kaneh Shamayim v'Oretz Mogen Avram B'Dvoro V'Chayim Etzim B'Ma'amoro Ha'el HaKadosh She'ein Kamohu Hamediach Li'amo B'Yom Shabbat Kodsho Ki Bam Ratzah Lahaniach Lahem Ki Bam Ratzah Lahaniach Lahem Lefanav Navo B'Yerov V'Chad V'Nodeh Lishmo B'Chol Yom Tamid Ba'on HaBrochot El HaHodot Adon למדו שני יוני, זכר למעשה,
מעשה בראשית.
Eloheinu, v'hei avosenu, v'senu v'chaseinu, kadeshenu, v'sosecha, v'senu v'ken v'sosecha, saveinu v'tevecha, v'savchenu v'shosecha, v'dahel libenu l'avdecha v'emes, anchileinu, Adonai Eloheinu, v'yavo v'son Shabbos kashecha, yinuchu v'yisrenu v'sheshemecha, baruch atah Adonai, mikadesh hasharos, kadeshalein, yiskadal v'yiskadash, me'rabo,
Amen.
v'almod yivra, kirusei v'lechmachusei, Chayev, no yom ev chayachot beis Yisrael, agol zayin kari v'imiru.
Amen. Yehei Shmei.
Rabba mevorach l'olam me'yom ha'yo. Yisbarach v'yishtabach v'yisbarach v'yisramam v'yisnasei. Yisadav v'yislev zalal shmei l'kodesha v'rechu. Le'ela min kol berchasa v'shirasa tushbachasa v'nechamasa. Da'amiran v'alma v'imiru. Amen. Tiskabal tzulosanu v'son l'chol Yisrael. Kana v'hana v'yishmaya v'imiru. Amen. Yehei Shlomo Rabba min Shemaya, v'chaim oleinu al kol Yisrael v'imiru.
Amen.
Oseh shalom mimramav, hu yaseh shalom, oleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imiru. Amen. Page 51. Are you able to? Please remain standing for oleinu.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon ha'kol, l'osei kedua l'yotzer b'reshit, shelo osanu k'goyei haratzos, ve'lo samanu k'mishpatos adamo, shelo sam cholkeinu kahen, ve'go aleinu kechol hamonam, v'anachnu borim, u'mishachavim modim, Melech, Malchei HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, She'olchei Shamayim.
Kakosu b'sorasecha Adonai Melech Yolam va'ed.
V'ne'emar, V'hoya Adonai, L'melech al ha'oretz, V'yom ha'hu, Yeh Adonai echad, U'shemo echad.
For Saturday, Shabbat, May 13th, corresponding to the 22nd day of the Hebrew month of Iyar, we commemorate the Yom Ha'atzmaut of the following people: David Cohn, father-in-law of Harriet Cohn; Maurice Weidenberg; Celia Haber, grandmother of Cheryl Bender; Max Lubitsch, father of Edward Lubitsch; Edith Natsimowitz, mother-in-law of Naomi Natsimowitz; Rita Shear, and Rachel Siegelberg. May their memories be for a blessing. My apologies if I mispronounced any names. If you are a mourner, if you have yard side, if you wish to join us in saying the Kaddish, please turn to page 52. Please remain standing and repeat with me. Yiskadal v'yiskadash shemei rabo, v'almod ivro kirusei v'yamir malchusei, v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei v'chol beis Yisrael, v'agolo v'zman kariv v'yimru.
Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabba Mavor L'olam Omei Umaya.
Yisbarach v'yishtabach v'yisba'ah v'yisramah v'yisnaseh, v'yisadah v'yisaleh v'yisalal, Shmei l'kodesho
Barechu.
Le'elo mikol berchasa v'shirasa v'shofasa v'nechamasa ta'amiran ba'alma v'yimru amen. Yehei Shlomo Rabba min Shemaya v'chayim oleinu v'akol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom b'ramav hu ya'aseh shalom oleinu v'akol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Is it off?
I don't know if it turned red. Yashakoak Murray, thank everyone for attending either in person or live stream. Again, we can't count the Omer now because it's not nighttime, but let me give you the hint for counting. It's a real good hint. You guys are going to know this for sure. He was a manager for both the Mets and the Yankees, and his number, I believe, was retired by both. He was a lot more successful with the Yankees than with the Mets. Casey Stengel. And if you don't know that, today is 36, a double chai. So when you count tonight, you'll know what it is. Services tomorrow morning are it's red. Services tomorrow morning are 9 o'clock. Tomorrow evening, 8:15 live stream only. Myra and Havdalah. Please try to be there at 8:15, but I'm doing it, and I don't want to be lonely. Sunday morning, 9 o'clock, Men's Club Tea and Tea breakfast after services, and then 8 o'clock. Also, starting this Sunday, since it is lighter now, we'll be doing a full mincha starting on Sunday. Sunday, every day except Saturday because we start later. We've been doing a mincha, of course, Friday because we're always earlier than that. So please join in, especially if you have a yard site or anything. We'll be still at 8 o'clock. A lot of other things going on, so please check the various things that are coming up. And here's Murray again. And good Shabbos, so I didn't say. Oh, and happy Mother's Day to everyone.
Page 53. Yigdal Elohim Chai v'yishtabach im so v'yeinei sel metziuso Echad v'yein yachid k'yichudo Nelom v'gam ein sof liyachdu so En lo demusa guf v'yeino guf Lo naharoch elov kedusha so Kadmon l'chol davar asher nivra Rishon rein reshis l'reishis so Hino Adon Olam v'chol notza Yoreh gedula so u'malchu so Shefa nevuah so nisono Elan shesegula so v'sifato L'kam b'Yisrael kemo she'od Naviyu ma'abid estemuna so Torasem esnasan liyahamo el Ayat neviyo neman beiso Lo yachlifa el v'lo yamita so Li'olamim l'zula so Sofev yodeya sisohareinu Mabit l'sof davar b'kadmo so Gomeli ish chesed kemi folo Nosen l'rosh hara kerisha so Yishlach l'ketz yamin m'shichenu Livdos mechake kes Yeshua so Mesim Yechayael berov chazdo Baruch Hadei Shem Tehila so Mesim Yechayael berov chazdo Baruch Hadei Shem Tehila so Shabbos Shabbat Shalom.
Just one thing, please make sure most people who anyway go out the main doors because these doors. No, thanks to Norman and the grants committee, we have our new security doors. I'll tell you, I didn't even know to come in the front, so I never come. I wish there was a way, but you don't know. If you're up here, you don't know if it's right. But nobody can seem to complain.
I mean, I can't see that.
No, you can't. You can't. He went to the Quaker. He left last night or yesterday. Got the menu, and he's coming back Sunday night.
Ready, my friend.
The bus stays at you.
Good. This Sunday's team is on sponsor. I saw it. They got it? Thanks, man.
I've only been here since 65.
Oh, Freddie, that mic. We got to figure out a way when it goes red to, pop up. I just noticed when I went over there.